Hi, welcome to Fat Girls Coping. I am Annette Richmond, your host and the creator of Fat Girls Traveling. I'm super excited to have this conversation today. I'm chatting with my girl Chantel of Voyaging, Vagabond. She actually helped me update my resume. I know a lot of us right now are looking for new jobs and figuring out how we're going to pivot during this pandemic. And she was really able to help me kind of get my resume together. She helped me so much, I got a job within a week. So I knew she was going to be my go-to girl to help our audience kind of figure out how to navigate this new career zone. And so let me introduce Chantel. Hey, boo.
Hey girl. So my name is Chantel Loura, and like Annette said, I am the creator behind the plus size travel blog, Voyaging Vagabond. I also am a body positivity activist, which is how Annette and I first met. And I also, as a side hustle, offer what I like to call professional consulting. So what that service basically entails is I go ahead and one-on-one help people kind of work through their resumes and work through any fears that they might have in terms of interviews and really pin down what can be improved. And it's just something for myself. I've always worked in a bunch of different industries, and I've gained a lot of confidence in terms of what a really great resume entails and how to not be terrified of an interview. So I just wanted to go ahead and find a way to offer that service to more people.
Thank you. That was super helpful for me. And I know that we're going to be helping so many other people. I posed the question in the Fat Girls Traveling Facebook community, and there were like over 80 questions. And so what I was able to do, right? People need jobs, girl. We out here looking for some jobs. What I did was kind of like organize them in a flow and kind of group the questions together because a lot of them were similar. And so for our audience that is watching, if you did ask a question, I might not like read your question in entirety because it's probably similar to a question that I am going to read in its entirety. But I wanted to start with our members and our youth and young adults who have recently graduated either high school or college. In our community, it's mostly people that are either graduating college with an undergrad or people that are just graduating from like a master's program. And one of the questions was specifically, I just graduated college this spring, so I'm looking for a job in my field. It's tough getting used to video interviews. I much prefer in person. So do you have any tips for like standing out during a video interview for a new job position?
Yeah, so first off, I totally understand. I like I like to consider myself someone that carries themselves very confidently in real life, but then as soon as I know like I'm on a video, I'm like, and then I like use finger guns too much, which like is never a good thing, but like, so I 100% understand getting nervous for a video chat. However, my biggest thing that I can recommend is to have a friend that's willing to sit down and kind of like shoot questions off of you. So maybe like text a friend and be like, hey, can we do like a fake interview real quick where I'll send you some questions and you and I can just have like a video chat. What I find is that I struggled a lot to be on video and to have an informative conversation. But once I kind of put myself in situations where I was doing it more, I found myself to be more confident. So I think finding ways to build that confidence so that, you know, you're not so intimidated by doing a video call, it can be really helpful. So I would 100% suggest reaching out to your girl and being like, can we do a fake interview real quick, and call her up on Skype, call her up on FaceTime, whatever it is. And that way you can just pretend like you're having this actual interview. So when it does happen, it's not as intimidating.
That's a great suggestion. And like, even just from that definitely inspired me. Like, if I were gonna have a friend do a mock interview with me, something I would ask them to do would be to point out if I say like a lot, because I'm from California, so I say like so much, as well as like and these
I say all the time. Yeah, I catch myself doing that all of the time.
So yeah, I would say like for anyone who's nervous about doing a video interview, definitely take Chantel's advice with having a friend do a mock interview, but then maybe have them watch some of those like natural tendencies you have with your language that might seem a little too casual for a job interview. And then for me, one thing I like to do is just like work on my posture, so like if I'm at a job interview, making sure that like my shoulders are straight and that I like feel like I look professional, you know what I mean? Because that will make me feel more confident during the interview.
Yes, and another thing I can suggest is to find an area that has really good Wi-Fi, find an area that's really quiet that you won't face any distractions. I know for myself, I was living in a hostel with 6 other people during quarantine. So when I had to have moments where I had a video chat, like finding a quiet Wi-Fi strong area that there were no distractions can be difficult, but it really does make a difference.
Very true. Just full transparency. This is our second filming of this because we had a Wi-Fi issue. I'm keeping it real. Like we
Yeah.
had to start and stop this whole interview because of Wi-Fi. So that is very true. We just experienced that, and now we're both better for it. No.
We have learned, what I have learned while being in Portugal since December is that the Wi-Fi in Portugal is oftentimes terrible no matter where you go. So just trying to work with that can be interesting, but it is a learning experience for sure.
Definitely. And so the next question that I had from one of the members of Fat Girls Traveling is kind of similar, but this member was saying that she has her resume on LinkedIn. She has, her cover letter at the ready. She feels like she has everything all set up. Her resume has been looked over by professionals because she's just, by her professors and stuff, because she's just graduated college. And she's still not getting any traction. And so she's wondering, like, what can she do to kind of stand out in an environment where there's a few million of us right now looking for jobs. So how do you stand out when you have that LinkedIn and you have that, professional thing on lock, but you still feel like your resume is being passed by?
Yeah, what I would suggest is to maybe take another look at your resume. If you are finding that it is getting passed by often, maybe you can change the style of it, change the format of it so that maybe it does stand out a little bit more. And aside from that, what I would recommend is to tell your friends and family the kind of job that you want. There have been times when, for myself, I typically work in digital marketing. So I handle social media marketing, Facebook ads, a bunch of other things that kind of fall under that umbrella. But if there is a lull in my services and I am looking to pick up a new client, typically what I'll do is let my friends and family on Facebook know that I am looking for a new client. If anybody knows anybody that is looking, to have them reach out to me. And oftentimes I will have people that reach out and are like, oh, I heard about you through so-and-so. And so word of mouth is something that's often forgotten in terms of job search, but the more people who know what you do and the services that you offer, the more likely they are to recommend you to other people that might be looking for those services.
That's very true, because I actually just landed like a little side gig based on me telling a friend that I was looking for something. So that's and one thing that you helped me with my resume, which made me feel like super, super old, was standing out by like adding a photo to my resume, which was something that I was like, what? The kids are doing that? Because like, when I was in college, like it was deemed unprofessional to have a photo on your resume. And I have been like blessed to where I haven't really had to give my resume in a while. I would usually show like job work experience or previous writing positions, things that I've written, or people would hire me from like word of mouth kind of thing. So when I had to kind of dig back in and look at my resume and looking at like your resume and some of our other mutual friends, the one thing that really stood out to me was that like my resume was just black and white and clean and simple, where other people had like pie charts and photos and beautiful graphics. And something that you helped me do was realize that Canva was my best friend, and that I could go to Canva and use one of their resume templates to create
Yes.
a resume that was more eye-catching. And I definitely think that that was one of the reasons why I did get hired so quickly, is because I did have a resume that stood out.
Yeah, I often tell people whenever I do like a one-on-one consulting, I'm like, okay, what program did you make your resume in? And if you tell me Microsoft Word, then I'm like, we got to change that. Like we gotta redesign all of that. And the beautiful thing, Canva.com, it is free to make an account. And like you said, there are countless outlines and different designs that you can use that are free, and it's an extremely user-friendly website. I can't tell you how simple it is to go in and put all of your information in, upload a really nice picture of you, add it to your resume, and find something that not only speaks to the job that you want, but also your personality and also your style, because I think essentially what you're doing when you're creating a resume is creating this little package of yourself, this nice little well-wrapped package of yourself that you can present and say, here I am. And when you're creating a resume on Microsoft Word, basic black and white, that format that everyone was told to do in high school, they're not really learning anything about yourself. And to show them, this is my personality, this is who I am, it kind of not only shows your ability to design graphically, which is a huge skill that a lot of jobs are looking for, but it also gives a better representation of who you are as a professional.
I 1,000% agree with that. And I definitely think that, like in the beginning, I felt like, oh, is this a little risky to put my photo on here? Because I was told in college, like, don't put your photo on your resume because people can discriminate against you based on your race or your sex or, basically your outer appearance, your fatness, whatever. But I also know that, like, when I was working in the fashion industry and hiring people, if I saw a resume that looked outdated in any way, I would just throw it in the trash. Like, even though that's not like the right thing to do or to say, like literally if I saw every single person's resume had a photo on it and there was one resume that didn't have a photo on it, I would probably throw that resume away, even if that person was like overqualified for the position. It's just like, one thing doesn't fit here,
Okay, real quick though, I don't have a picture on my resume. So if people are stressing because they don't want to put a picture of themselves on their resume, rest assured that you do not have to. Personally, for myself, I don't have one. I just am obsessed with the style of my resume right now, and it doesn't have room for a picture. However, there are different ways to show your personality. But Annette's right. Annette is 100% right. People underestimate how many people apply for one single job. And the people that are hiring will get hundreds of applicants. So if you're not doing anything to your resume to help you stand out and show that you are unique and different, they're just going to go right past it.
And I'll just clarify, Chantel doesn't have a photo, but she does have a pie chart with the languages that she speaks. She has a list of her visas so that she, because she is a dual citizen. And so she has all these other graphics that really make her resume stand out. And so it's not necessarily just about the picture, but there are things that make your resume stand out. And now there are things, thanks to you, that help my resume stand out.
That makes me so happy.
Makes me happy too, girl. I'm trying to get that coin.
Amen.
The next question I have, which kind of relates to that work that you helped me do, but is really relevant to people that are just freshly out of college or high school. Someone who doesn't necessarily have work experience, but has like volunteer experience. How do they kind of parlay those experiences into something that they can put on their resume?
Yeah, I honestly think that volunteer experience is fantastic. And I think it's such a great thing to highlight. For myself, when I was working retail the entire duration that I was in university. And then I graduated with a history degree because I loved history. And I didn't realize that there were no jobs in the history field that I was able to get with an undergrad degree. So I understand kind of like the intimidation of having skills that aren't necessarily work experience, but finding a way to create finding a way to show that those skills are marketable. So what I would recommend in terms of that situation is to really sit down and think about all of the different things that you do in your volunteer work that could apply to whatever job that you're applying to. So I'm very big on reading the job description and finding different things that you can do within that description and including them in your resume. So look through the job description, see if there's anything that you've already been doing with whatever activities you work include. They're looking at skill enough to put it in their job description, and you have those skills, whether it be from a work environment or not, it's really important to highlight that to show them that you are capable of doing that kind of work.
No,
And
that's
believe
super
in
helpful.
yourself. Believe in yourself too. Like whatever work you're doing is great. Like just find a way to highlight it in a way that sounds professional. So like for instance, I was briefly in a teaching program before I switched over to history, and I volunteered in public schools, and I was working as a teacher's assistant, and you know, things like time management, able to lead small groups, like those are things that are really important in a vast majority of different jobs. So, you know, just finding those little skills that you already have and making sure you're highlighting them is really important.
Yeah, totally true. And that was something that you also helped me do with my resume, because there were so many different things that I've done, like, you know, run fat camp and lead people on trips around the world, all these things that I am capable of doing, but they weren't represented on my resume. And
Yeah,
yeah, so being able to like find places to put those things in, I think we
yeah,
created like a volunteer section, or
yep.
like we also created like an accolades section
I was
on my,
I was
yeah.
just gonna say that. Yeah, so one of the things I told Annette, because she had some open space and I was like, listen, but we gotta do something about this open space. Like we gotta put something in there. And so I've known Annette long enough to know that Annette has won multiple awards, has been featured in some really fantastic publications. And I was like, you need to include that. So even if you're fresh out of university and you know, you won a scholarship or you won an award or you graduated magna cum laude, like include that. Like create a section for that and include it, because whatever accolades you have, those are important. Like you worked really hard to get those and it deserves to be highlighted.
Very true. And it's so good to hear that. Those were things that I hadn't thought about when I was creating my resume. And I really do think that they helped my resume stand out. The next question I have is from a member of the community who was recently laid off and is kind of feeling like it's a really difficult time to even start looking for a job, like during a pandemic. And I can kind of relate to that too, because part of me feels like, you know, is the position that I just took on, is that going to be like a long-term position, or is it going to be a short-term position? Like dealing with the guilt of that, but also knowing that like I need some source of income as well. So how do you
Yeah.
deal with like this whole idea of getting a job during a pandemic, getting a job while working from home or socially distancing, and kind of like the anxiety of all that, or not being able to get a job because there's so much unemployment right now, and because so many of us are still, you know, if we are in a state or a area where we're allowed to go out, a lot of us are still having anxiety about that, you know. And so
Yeah.
like what's your advice on that?
So just to give everyone some perspective so that they don't think that like we're some big shot professionals, I lost my job 2 weeks into quarantine. I had this job that I absolutely adored. I was with them for a year and a half. And then 2 weeks into quarantine, I was in Portugal in a foreign country by myself, just like kind of like accepting the shock and like dealing with being in a global pandemic away from my family, away from my partner. And out of nowhere, I lost my job. Like I said, 2 weeks into quarantine, and it was really difficult for me. Like I spiraled, I'm not even gonna try to lie, I spiraled into like a crazy depression because it was extremely overwhelming to already deal with these outside factors. And then my reliable source of income is being taken away. And it was just like all of this uncertainty kind of like mounted on top for me. And it was just too much. And I just like went into like complete recluse mode. Like I didn't talk to anybody. I was barely eating. I didn't even open the shades for my windows. And I just like sadly watched RuPaul's Drag Race on repeat. And it was just like, and ate way too many Snickers bars. And by way too many, I mean like just as many as I wanted to eat. So, you know, it's okay to feel those feelings. Like, I want you to understand that like a lot of us lost our jobs. That was what I found so much comfort in, was knowing that like I wasn't the only one that was going through this. Like all of my friends and family were experiencing this. And what I think is really important is just like understanding that this entire situation is new for all of us. So like a lot of people lost their jobs, and a lot of people are going through this uncertainty of whether or not the next job that they have will be a stable job. But like I have friends that picked up small jobs just to kind of like pay over the bills, you know? So if you are worried about like having money come in, you know, maybe just find something right now that works in your schedule, works with whether or not you're social distancing, that will kind of like cover every bill you might have to take away that stress. And what the other thing I can recommend is that if you do have some free time when you are starting to feel a little bit better, there are so many websites now offering free courses. So I signed up for like a tourism and hospitality course through a university. I signed up for Google's digital advertising course and their marketing course. And so if you are worried about finding a job, then like spend a few weeks doing like a bunch of crash courses so you can find all these different skills, and then you'll have more skills that will make you more profitable to these new jobs that you might be finding.
Girl, send over that Google advertising thing. That sounds interesting. And what was the other one? Like, I feel like I need both of those courses.
Yeah, so I actually found out about it through Gabby from Pax Light. So Gabby posted about it and was like, I just finished this course in marketing through Google, and I was like on like my 6th Snicker bar with like chocolate all over my mouth, and I was like, yeah, I should do something with my life too, you know. Yeah, it's a free course offered by Google. You get a certification at the end of it that you can kind of like put in your portfolio. You can highlight on your LinkedIn profile. You can also put it in your resume. And I mean, the beauty, I don't want to say the beauty, but kind of like the outcome of this whole pandemic is that a lot of places that would typically charge for classes are now offering them for free. So I recommend to anyone to utilize that right now.
Agreed. I'm definitely going to be doing that. So let's
I'll send you the links after this call.
Exactly. I'm like, I need them links, and I will put the link in the Fat Girls Traveling like link tree. So once this airs, it'll be there. Okay, so now the questions are going to pivot into like job search questions. And these are kind of just more general questions that I think a lot of us are wondering about. The first one is a cover letter really necessary? And how does she get her resume noticed by like through her cover letter? And I think a lot of us, you know, will send a resume without a cover letter and then be like, should I have done that? So like, how important are those things, and what can you kind of say in your cover letter that will get them to open your resume?
A cover letter is absolutely necessary. I cannot stress that enough. Not only is a cover letter necessary, but for myself, I'm a little bit of a control freak is the word we can use. So the header that I have on my resume is also the header that I have on my cover letter. So it just looks really uniform. Like I said, back to what I said earlier, when you apply to a job, you want your cover letter, you want your resume to be a perfectly well-rounded package of yourself. And I think creating matching cover letters and resumes is a very important thing to do. Same thing, you can do it in Canva. You literally just make a copy of your resume, take out all of the stuff in the middle, keep the header, and then you just create your cover letter. But a cover letter is extremely important. So typically what I would do in my cover letter is introduce myself, tell them how I found them, and tell them flat out that I think I would be a perfect fit for your team. And this is why. Because what's going to happen is they're going to look at your resume and they're going to see your skill set, but your cover letter allows you to, one, show that you're capable of creating professional text. And it's also going to go into detail a little bit more. So for instance, I will have, yes, I have dual citizenship. But, in my cover letter, I might mention, yes, I speak a little bit of Portuguese. I also have dual citizenship. This is the country that I share citizenship with. So it's just a little bit more detail rather than just like a bullet point of your skills. So it just kind of offers you the opportunity to explain yourself a little bit more and to just kind of introduce yourself a little bit more. And, tell them confidently that, yes, I'm the perfect fit for this job and this is why.
So true. I definitely agree. Cover letters are important. Do it. And Chantel did tell me to do the take my resume, take the middle part out and make that my cover letter. It's also important to edit and change your cover letter with every position. Hopefully
yes, so
you know
important.
that. Yeah, that's super important. You have to, and also your resume. For some positions that you're applying for, you might put some work experience on. And for a different position, you might change that work experience or remove it. And so it's always important to put your best foot forward and to have the work experience and the cover letter reflect the position that you're applying for.
Yeah, so I 100% am in total agreement with what Annette is saying. So for myself, on my resume, at the bottom, I have a skills section, and it lists various skills that I feel confident in. However, every single time I apply for a job, I look at the skills that they're asking for, and I make sure I include those skills. So those are changing every single time I'm looking at a new position. So each time I'm sending in a resume, as tedious and frustrating as that might be to have to go in and constantly edit, I think it's really important. And then the other thing I would suggest in terms of your cover letter is to really do your research on the company. So I always like to, whenever I'm applying to a company, I always like to go to their mission statement or their about us section on their website and kind of see where they what they're not, I don't want to say their morals, but kind of what their beliefs are, and make sure I'm showing that I align with those beliefs in the cover letter. So, I see that you're doing work in this area. I also am very passionate. You'll see that with this experience that I have. So just showing them that you really are a great fit for their company.
So true. That's kind of like the work ethos, the ethics behind the brand, and that is important to kind of let the brand know in the interview that hey, first of all, I've done my research on you, and second of all, our ethics, professionally align. I think that is really helpful. The next question I had was from a member who wants some tips on creating a digital portfolio. And so for people who are in a more creative field, we have to create some kind of online work space that kind of shows people what we do. How would you recommend someone go about that, especially maybe someone who is just breaking into this kind of freelancing or creative space?
Yeah, so like I said, my major industry that I work in typically is digital marketing. So for myself, I personally don't have a portfolio. However, what I will have is a Google Drives folder that has various content that I've created, various copy that I've created, various articles that I've created, so they can get an idea. When I send along my resume, my cover letter, I'll also include this Google Drive folder to give them an idea of what I've done for past clients. However, I reached out to my partner, who is a graphic designer, so has a digital portfolio, and I asked her, I was like, hey baby, what kind of websites do you use to kind of put your work online. And she told me that there are two different websites that she uses. She uses behance.net. That's BEHANCE.net. It's an incredible website for creative individuals that have basically everything that you can imagine, but it's a free hosting. You can go ahead and put all of your work up there, whether it be graphic design, whether it be art, all these different things. And then she also told me that she uses myportfolio.com. And the last thing that she does is she has a separate Facebook page for her design brand. So she kind of like came up with a name, created this brand, and then made a Facebook page for it. So if you are looking for a digital portfolio, those are three options that you can potentially look into. And then if you want to host your own website, GoDaddy.com is very inexpensive and affordable if you want to create something. So, and you can always create like a WordPress that you can put different things on. So there are a ton of options, especially ones that you don't necessarily have to spend any or little money on.
I definitely agree. Wix is another kind of like free website building platform. I don't necessarily think it's super user friendly for me, but for someone who is maybe like a photographer or a makeup artist who's like literally making a artist portfolio of their work, that could be super easy and click through kind of like a magazine.
Yep.
It could be fun to get creative, and maybe if you are in like a creative profession like fashion or makeup or hairstyling, to maybe create like an online magazine of your work. You know what I mean? So do something that might stand out. Like our friend Sam did like an online magazine. That could be a cool opportunity.
So good.
Yeah, that could be a cool opportunity as like a creator in the beauty or fashion space, or even like someone that does like architect or landscape photography or something like that. Any type of photography space would be great to create just like a nice little online magazine for yourself. And then the last thing I will agree with Chantel on, last thing for this topic, is Facebook. I think that creating a Facebook page for yourself, either as a consultant or as a brand or as a business, not only does it make you as a brand or a business or a consultant look more professional, it's an easy place where potential employers can go to find your stuff and potential clients can go to find your stuff.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, most brands are going to look at your social media presence to begin with. So aside from being really weary of that, showing that you're in control of that also really paints you in a really good light. So I totally agree with Annette. And you know what I quickly wanted to say, one, Sam made that magazine in Canva, guys. So if you don't make an account on Canva by the end of this, know that we're going to have some words for you, because it is the best thing you could possibly do for yourself. And two, if you are in photography, if you are a makeup artist, then social media is your best friend. Like, use the hashtags, be smart about, in terms of tagging people, using the right hashtags. Because I know for myself, like I booked a photo shoot in Florida when I was visiting a friend, and I wanted a makeup artist. And the first thing I did was makeup artist, St. Petersburg, Florida. And I found my person through her social media profile, and she was fantastic. So like, really, really understand how important these different platforms can be, and the fact that they're free, like, why not utilize them?
So true. Use all the free stuff. And then second thing with this is, if you are looking to get and to break into a more creative field, like maybe you're working in an office, but you've always dreamed of being a makeup artist or a photographer or a fashion stylist or something like this, this is a great time to kind of start building your portfolio for those type of more creative services. And so even if you do have a job currently, but you're looking to kind of pivot into like potentially building your own brand or freelancing on the side or just doing these creative things for fun, it is important to get into the habit of saving the content that you create and putting it somewhere online, so that potential collaborators, potential clients, and potential employers will be able to find all of that information in one spot.
Yes, I absolutely agree. I 100% agree on that.
Awesome. Okay, so the next question I think is super relatable. Someone's asking like, where should they even look for jobs? Like what job titles should they be looking for? Like kind of where's the best place to start, and kind of how do you decide which jobs to apply for based on like your work experience?
Yeah, so I think that comes with confidence in whatever industry you work in, and creating that experience, which I know is an answer that nobody wants to hear. But first off, if you want to find a job, I always recommend LinkedIn. Every single job I've found almost has been from LinkedIn. So it really is a fantastic resource. I'm seeing more and more remote jobs going on there every single day. And it's really the best place to start. The next thing I would recommend is if you really know what it is you want to do. So like for myself, there was a time where I was waiting tables, but I wanted to get into digital marketing. And so I wanted to be a social media manager. So I typed in social media manager on Google, hiring, and then the city that I was in at the time. And you'll see different companies that are offering that position. And then another thing that I usually recommend to people that people necessarily don't think of right off the bat is find brands or companies that you really would love to work for and go to their job section. There's usually always a job section at the bottom of their website, and it'll have all of their current openings. So I think it's really important to just kind of like figure out what it is you want to do in terms of your career, what brands or what companies you would want to work for, and then just going directly to them and just seeing what they're looking for. And then like having the confidence to kind of know what it is you want to do. That way it makes your search a little bit easier.
Those are definitely great tips. One thing I want to say before I forget, and you and I had this conversation before we even decided to do this interview, but women will not apply for a job simply because they feel like they don't meet the qualifications, whereas men will apply for a job even if they don't meet the expectation. And so I would want to empower anyone who is interested in a position, even if you feel like you might not qualify for that position, to apply. Just get
Yeah.
in the habit of applying for jobs if you think that you're going to be a good fit, and explain to them why you think that you would be the best fit. Something else that I've been doing as far as job search and cover letter is using verbiage that makes me sound like I'm the best person. Not saying like, oh, I think I'll be a great addition to the team and I think you'll like me. It's being more empowered and saying like,
I
I'm the
will be.
perfect I'm
Yep.
the perfect person for this position. You're going to be
Yes.
missing out if you don't hire me because I know I'm going to kill it.
100%.
I'm going to
Yep.
blow you away. You know what I mean? And so it's really about being confident.
I I could not agree with you more, and I honestly think it's so important that we're talking about this. Like I want to make it very clear that I was waiting tables at an Italian restaurant serving up chicken parms and pizza when I went to my first digital marketing agency and was like, I'm going to work here. And like I was waiting tables before that, and like I didn't have the work experience, but I had been doing all of the things that they were asking for within my own brand because I was working on Voyaging Vagabond already. And so I was like, you know, these skills are skills that I can apply towards an actual career. So like, why not just go for it? And I got the job. And then I was like, I don't want to work for anybody. So now I do it for myself. So, you know, like if you like, I cannot stress what Annette is saying enough. Like, I don't care if you don't think you're qualified, go for it. Like just go for it. Because what I say is what's the worst thing that could happen is they could say no, but you're not applying and they're already saying no. So just having that faith in yourself and kind of taking that lead. Like you never know what's going to happen, and more so if you're confident and you really express to them that you have the skills that they're looking for, then like it's likely that you'll get it. And so why not just go for it? So believe in yourself and stop doubting yourself. Okay. Okay.
Exactly. I agree. I concur. And just to wrap up that question, obviously, after I say this, you can add more. But to wrap up that question, something that I found myself doing in this job search was, and I do it often when I'm looking for jobs, is searching for the definition of specific positions. So it
Mhm.
might be like searching social media jobs or social media management positions.
Mhm.
And within that position, there's lots of different skills or lots
Yeah.
of different objectives. And so one thing
Mhm.
that I found, one like term that I found during that whole investigation process was community manager. And
Yeah.
that was something that I didn't have on my resume because I didn't even really have the language to even know what that was. But after doing some research into like social media management, I found this title of community manager. And obviously, as the manager of 12,000 people on Facebook, you know what I
You're
mean?
already doing it.
I've been a community manager for years. You know, I wasn't aware of that title. And so
Yeah.
the last bit of her question was like, how do I even know what jobs to search for, what keywords to look for? Sometimes that takes a little bit of investigating in the field that you're interested in getting into. So if that's fashion, you know, researching different fashion positions, terms, if that's
Yeah.
social media, if that's healthcare, because there's all these different positions that, you know, there's doctor and there's nurse, but there's all these other positions in the healthcare system that need to be filled. But if you don't know what it's called, you won't be able to search for it and to keep your eye on that job.
Yeah, yeah, I 100% agree with that because, like you said, I think a lot of people underestimate how many skills they really have, and that's kind of why they feel like maybe they can't apply for the job, maybe they're not qualified. But exactly like you said, like, had you not seen that community management, then you wouldn't include it on a resume. But then you're like, oh, wait, I've already been doing that for years, so I clearly have that skill. So, like, a lot of times you're really more qualified than you think you are. It's just a matter of doing the research and understanding like the proper verbiage to call yourself whatever that might be.
Exactly. And I think that perfectly kind of segues into the next section, which is people having questions about adjusting their resume based on work experience. So
Mhm.
let's see. One person said, how do I reflect that my job title doesn't accurately reflect my role at the company so that I can be considered for job openings that my job title alone makes it seem I'm unqualified for. And that can also work with if you just quit a job or you just were laid off at a job under a certain title, and now you want to apply in a different industry for a different position. How do you readjust the work experience in your resume there to kind of fit into a whole different career?
Yeah, I think it really goes into researching what that career might be asking for and making sure your skills are tailored to whatever skills that career asks for. So, your job title is one thing, but the skills that you acquired within that job that might apply to a different career, a different industry is something completely different. So, your job title can say that you're one thing, but you also have all of these other skills that would kind of transfer over to different areas that you can highlight, and that can be more important rather than just the title.
Exactly. And that answer perfectly leads into the next question, which is I
Ooh, perfect transitions.
look
Here
at
we
our segue.
go.
I would love some tips on getting back into work after kids. I have been out of my career for the past 5 years now, and I can't even get an interview for entry level role. How would you like? What would you do? What kind of suggestions would you give someone who's coming from like a caretaker position or a stay-at-home mom position? How would you, you know, and maybe their last professional experience was 5 or 10 years ago. How would they adjust their resume to seem more current?
Yeah, so I don't have kids, so I can't speak from that perspective, but I was a nanny for a good amount of time. I love how like in this interview I'm just like I was this, I was this, I was this, I was this. So honestly guys, if I could be an example that you can get into whatever industry that you want to get into, like please let me be that example. But yes, I did nanny for a really long time, and at the time it was fantastic. But once I left that, I was like, okay, I just did that for multiple years. How am I going to create marketable skills from that? However, what you're realizing is that like time management is a thing, like keeping people happy is a thing, like customer service, like whether or not it's your kids or not, like you're still able to, you know, do those different things. And I think a lot of times, at least from my friends that do have kids that are getting into the workforce, is that they have such a rigid idea of what the workforce is. However, we live in this digital society now where there's all kinds of jobs. Like there are jobs within any kind of industry. So anything you think that you might do really well in, there's probably a job for it. So, you know, don't think that returning to the workforce necessarily means like going back to an office. Like it could be like going to like, let's say you want to work retail for a few days a week. Like you can do retail. You want to wait on some tables so you can talk to people that aren't children for a few days. Like you can do that. Like there's writing jobs. There's development jobs, there's graphic design jobs, like there's teaching English online, there's proofreading jobs, like there are so many different kind of jobs. So like don't sell yourself short by just looking at entry level positions. Like find the things that you're good at. Like I think moms are so strong and so powerful because like I took kids that were not my own and I was like, this is hard as hell. So like I think a mom has so many skills and are just such hard workers naturally that like don't sell yourself short because you're just applying to these entry level positions and it's not going the way that you want. Like really kind of do your research and see like what new jobs are out there that maybe necessarily weren't out there when you were back in the job market, like all those years ago, you know?
So true. And I would definitely suggest even thinking about creating opportunities for yourself. So maybe that's like a mommy walking club, you know what I mean? Or creating a Facebook group for like mommies in your area.
Yep.
Because being a community leader in that way does lead to job experience.
Yeah,
And then like we were
definitely.
saying before, for people who are just graduating university, look at some of the things that you've done in volunteering. You know, look at some of the ways that you've supported friends and family in the past and think about ways that you can utilize those experiences on your resume. Because I think that just because you're not getting paid to do something doesn't mean that it's not work, doesn't mean
Yeah.
that it doesn't count as work experience and as lived experience. And so I definitely think that, like you said, and that like we've been saying, it's going to take some research, especially if you're breaking into an industry that you haven't been in before. So
Yep.
researching the different job titles and the different job descriptions and all of those kind of things, and then figuring out what the roles are for those job descriptions and pulling out the things that you feel comfortable doing and the experiences that you've done that have given you, you know, the education in those spaces.
Yeah, I think I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut
No,
you
that was
off.
it. Nope, that was
I
it.
was just gonna say I think what Annette's saying is so important, to really sit down and highlight all of this experience that you've gotten just by living your life. It doesn't necessarily have to be strictly work experience. Like we're acquiring experiences that result in different skills every single day, whether you realize it or not. But it's just a matter of really recognizing that and being able to use the proper words to market yourself within that skill. And then also, I know a lot of people are worried about gaps in work experience. So like whether you have like a few years that you weren't necessarily working because you were raising your kids, I think it's very important to be honest and transparent about that. Like I had a job interview once and they were like, oh, you haven't worked in 3 months. And I was like, yeah, I was backpacking through Europe for 3 months and I was only supposed to be there for 1, but then I decided to stay for 3. And, you know, we kind of talked about the different experiences that I gained from that moment. So, you know, I don't think that you have to necessarily feel like it's a hindrance to have a gap in work. I think it's just important to recognize that life happens and that if a brand doesn't, or like a brand or a company doesn't necessarily understand that, then like, do you really want to work with them? Like,
Yeah, I think that hopefully brands are going to be a little less rigid with that stuff.
mhm.
Especially if you're like raising a family or helping out a, you know, a family member who's
Yeah,
ill or, you know, moving. There's lots of different situations in which you might not work for a little bit. Like we're in a pandemic right now, you know, like
yeah,
Chantel said, you know, her job's dried up for a little bit, so did mine. So a lot of us are out of work right now, and so
yeah,
I think it's important to be honest about that and to not feel shame because of
yeah,
that. But I also think that it's important to leverage the experiences that you do have, including volunteering, including, you know, even trips that you do with friends. If you're helping other people, like look at the things that you've done in your life and figure out how you can leverage those on your resume to
yep,
better describe and to better like show the full story of who you are and who you would be as an employee.
yeah, absolutely.
The next question is, which I struggle with often, is I want to make sure that I don't get written off as a no for positions that require a 4-year degree, because I don't have a 4-year degree. I have 2 decades of experience instead. So do you have any tips on that? I know for me, I went to design school, so I have an associate's degree. And so
Mhm.
I do find myself sometimes second guessing if I should apply for a position because I don't have the bachelor's that they're requiring. But then often sometimes it'll say like degree or work experience. And so generally I'll feel comfortable with my work experience, but sometimes I
Mhm.
won't. And so then I just won't apply. So what do you say about that stuff?
Yeah, you know, I think that's a really unfortunate perspective. And I know in the past that there's a lot of companies that would just like have you fill out this form on their website, and it was like degree, yes or no. And as soon as you hit no, you have like these bots that are going in the system. They're like, okay, nope. And like you're instantly getting pulled out, which I think is extremely unfortunate and kind of a hindrance to these companies, because I find experience to be so valuable over a degree. I mean, like I said, I have a degree in history. I have a degree in history, writing and rhetoric, and anthropology. And I don't do anything within that degree. Like I did it because I wanted to be a history professor. And then I decided that I enjoyed traveling the world and telling fat people that they're beautiful. And I liked doing that more. And I liked doing digital marketing way more. But I think that having experience is more important because you can speak to them on a professional level that someone who maybe just be graduating school maybe necessarily can't. So, you know, I didn't get a degree in marketing, but I've been working in it for enough years to know exactly what I need to say when I walk into an interview to make them realize that they need me to be part of that company. And you do too. If you have that experience, you absolutely do too. So that's what's important. And the beautiful thing is that more and more companies are kind of steering away from like this form that you're just filling out and filtering people off, like just by clicking yes or no to an answer. So I think that now is a beautiful time where like there is more opportunity for people that might not necessarily have a degree. And I like to also laugh and be like, who wants to be $300,000 in student debt anyways? So I was just financially smart about my decision.
Exactly, girl. Damn, yeah, those student loans. Woo, that's a different subject. That's a different conversation.
That's a
Um,
different live. That is a different live.
um, so the last kind of chunk that I wanted to get into before we wrap this up, and there were so many questions about this, so many like specific stories and experiences. I'm going to just read like one or two, but they're
Yeah,
all
please.
basically about like transitioning from one career into the next. And for me, I'm calling that like the pivot. So many of us
Yep.
are doing the professional pivot right now. One
I
member
pivot all the
shared,
time.
yeah, one member shared, what is the best way to transition into a new career when your current field is so niche? I have been in the same field for almost 20 years. She's in the workers' comp career, and she's been burnt out to the point that it's affecting her health. And she would love to transition into something new, but all of the experience is very specific to that field. And so she's worrying that any transition that she does will require a massive pay cut, unless she kind of stays in the same field, which she's realizing that she hates. So
yeah, that's a difficult reality because oftentimes it does require a pay cut, which I'm sure is not the answer that you're hoping for me to tell you, but it's just the reality of the case. However, so for instance, I'll use this situation. So my girlfriend Steph was a security guard for years, like just got into it. Annette's laughing because she
you
knows
didn't
my
hear me,
girlfriend.
but I literally screamed. I said, "What?" Chantel can see my face, but Steph, she's so cute and small. How is she security for years?
Yeah, so she's like a 4'11" Filipino, but like works security. But like, okay, so got into security because we were saving up to go backpacking. And then like one security job led to another security job, led to another security job, led to another security job. And then Steph was like, oh, dang, like I've been doing this for years. And now all of my experience pertains to this particular thing. And this is not what I want to do one bit. Like I do not want to be doing security for the rest of my life. So what Steph did, so Steph has always wanted to get into graphic design. So what Steph did was kind of teach herself how to do those things. So she was like watching YouTube videos, practicing different programs, like figuring out what it would take to be a graphic designer, and then doing everything in her power to do that. So now at first, when she transitioned out of that and went into graphic design, like wholeheartedly, there was a pay cut at first. But the beautiful thing is that Steph was doing it for so long and kind of like really focused on like developing those skills that the pay cut didn't last for long. It lasted for a few months while she built up her portfolio. But then once she got to that point, she was charging what she was making doing security. And now she's charging even more. So, you know, there might be an instance where, you know, you do take a pay cut, but if you do your research and really figure out what it is you do want to do and figure out what exactly that entails and how to be the best professional within that industry, then, you know, understand that it might be for a month, it might be for a month or two, but if you're really committed to it, then it doesn't have to be forever.
That's so true. And I think that in that specific instance, I think that that member is going to have to think quality of life versus funds, which is, like you said, an unfortunate decision to have to make. But since she did share that like her current work environment is impacting her health, that is kind of the decision that you have to make. Like, am I going to continue in a position where I feel more financially secure, but my health is impacted? Or, you know, and my quality of life is impacted? Or do I potentially shift to a different career where my quality of life can improve, but my financial resources go down? And like you said, that might be for a short time, or it might be for longer than you're comfortable with, but it's a hard decision that it sounds like needs to be made.
Yeah, it's really important to kind of figure out what's more important to you. Like, I understand that like paying the bills is extremely stressful. Like I totally feel that stress too. So like I get it. But I've also been in a position where like, yeah, I was financially stable, but I was glued to a laptop from the moment my eyes opened to the moment my eyes went to bed, working for a job that didn't appreciate me and was so mentally drained and such an unhealthy place, mentally, physically, emotionally, that it was worth the pay cut to just not have to deal with that anymore. So like, it's really a matter of like balancing like whether or not you're willing to take that pay cut if it means like you being happier with your life, which I think is absolutely more important.
Yeah, and I do want to also just throw out there that it's not necessarily an all or nothing situation. I'm
Yep.
not sure what position she is open to looking into, but maybe it's a situation where you keep your, your workers' comp job for 2 to 3 months as you
Mhm.
start to build the experiences that you need to pivot into that
Totally.
new position, so that
Yeah.
you don't have to start at entry level. And so
Yeah.
sometimes that might look like, if you are going into marketing, or like Steph, if you're going into graphic design, maybe that means doing what Steph did and like teaching herself, but then also reaching out to a friend or two and saying, hey, can I redo your logo, or can I help you with the graphics on your website, so that you can
Yep.
actually get that work experience and that like working with a client under your belt, so that
Yep.
when you do start in that new field and that new position, you are going to be starting with a jump start with someone who's just like a entry level position. You're going to have a jump start on them, which could lead to, your pay increasing quicker. And so
Yeah.
it's a
100%.
situation, totally, it's a situation where you can keep your secure job for now, but then use your spare time to kind of develop the career and the space that you want to go to, so that when you do decide to pivot, it's not like start at the bottom and have to work your way up to the top.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really responsible thing to do it at. I have a difficult time being that responsible. So it's nice that it's getting me. I'm like, I'm not happy. I'm out. But, and that's right. Like you don't necessarily have to just quit right off the bat and just get into an entry level job. Like you can kind of like build up your blocks while you still are financially stable, so that like you're not making that huge cut necessarily.
Perfect. And then I had one last question before we wrap it up. And it kind of,
Oh,
I know, it kind of goes into this transition thing too, but this one was pretty specific. And I think the other ones kind of relate to that first question. The last question is, I'm looking for something that will allow me to be mobile. I just signed up for the TFL program, but I'm not sure that I'm ready for teaching. And so it's the TEFL program. That is the teaching English as a second language. A lot of people
yep.
will move to different countries, and if they have that certification and a bachelor's degree, they're able to go and teach English all over the world. And so I want to kind of form that question to us, because we're used to traveling the world and working, but I also want to form it in like a remote work type style. So even if this isn't for a person who is going to be teaching language, her main question is she wants a job that's mobile. And so how does
Yeah.
she find that and the flexibility of kind of a remote working position?
So the funny thing is I applied for TEFL when I first started, when I wanted to be remote, and I got denied. Which is so funny because I come from an English background, like grew up with immigrants. So like totally like that is my realm, and they straight up denied me. And I was like, because what I find is that oftentimes when you do want to go remote, that's the first thing everybody suggests. They're like, oh, we'll teach English online. And so that was my first thing, and I got denied, and I was like, oh my God, what do I do now? Like, how do I find a remote job? But I find, especially now, like if there's any silver lining that like this pandemic could have brought, is that so many companies went remote that now I think it's going to be a complete and utter shift in how the workforce really like whether or not you need to go to an office will be reevaluated. So I think more and more brands are going to be going remote, even in terms of like technology and where we are as a society. I think it's just a natural transition. So I foresee a lot of different positions going remote. The other thing that I would recommend is like, if it's an industry, whether it be like copywriting, developing, customer service. I'm trying to think of a few others that like aren't strictly marketing, but a lot of these jobs are already remote. So look for those positions. There's fantastic resources online for digital nomads. I personally love Guava Bean. So Guava Bean sends out a newsletter every single Friday with a bunch of different jobs in a bunch of different industries, and they're all remote positions. I know Andrea from It's Travel OD is always posting remote jobs. So, you know, if you do want to go remote, know that there are resources out there that you can find jobs that aren't strictly just teaching English online. And then another thing that I find to be really important too is that if you develop a skill and carry yourself with enough confidence, and you know that you can work remotely, then you can kind of dictate whether or not you can approach your employer and be like, I would rather be remote. So like this past job that I had, the one that I had for a year and a half, started off as like, oh yeah, come into the office. And then I was like, yeah, all right, well, okay, well, we'll see about that. And then I was maybe coming to the office like a couple times a week in the beginning, and then it went to like once a week, and then it went to like once every 2 weeks. And then I basically was like, at the time, I was planning on traveling to Thailand for a month. And I was like, listen, I'm going to Thailand for a month. Like, I'm taking the job remote. And then they were like, okay, we'll treat it as a test run. Like, if this goes well, then like maybe we can consider you being remote more often. And that's what it turned into. I was so confident in what I did, and I had the deliverables to show that I was capable of working while on the road, that when I did come back, it was kind of like, okay, well, we respect Chantel enough. We understand that she's capable of getting the job done, so we can give her that freedom. And by the end of it, I mean, like, I hadn't been in the office by 6 months because I had been living in Portugal. And I mean, granted, Corona hit and I lost that job, but I really was able to kind of satisfy that need to wanting to go remote based off of my confidence and the fact that I was able to deliver what they were asking for in the job, no matter where I was in the world, and able to show them that. So maybe you can work out an opportunity where you can be like, hey, like, I'm going on this trip for 2 weeks, but you know, I still want to be able to work. Is there a way we can like try out remote? And if it works from there, maybe we can consider that in the future. Like, just be open and honest. A lot of times people don't want to pay for the overhead anyways. So if you want to go remote and just work from your laptop, like, from a finance standpoint, like, it's better for them anyways.
I agree, and I'm happy that this pandemic is allowing employers to see just how much more accessible working from home is. I recently did an interview with a disabilities rights activist, and I had to, you know, read a lot of different information about the, you know, coronavirus and people working from home. And so I have to say that it is super frustrating that now, you know, like, I love that so many of us are able to work from home. I've been doing it for years, but it's frustrating to read that people with disabilities have been fighting for an opportunity to work from home for years, and employers have been denying it to them because they didn't see that it was a necessity for them, even though sometimes it was like a medical issue. And it took for like non-disabled people to be impacted for like working from home to be acceptable, which is frustrating. If people like need it for their healthcare, it seems like it should be more feasible. And you know how I am, just to throw in some numbers, you know what I mean? The ADA,
always got the stats.
you know, I always got some stats, because that's the thing. Like, some people will like learn from just hearing someone's story. Other people need data and stats for it to register for them. The ADA, the American Disabilities Association, there were 30 cases in 2019 of people requesting to work from home for health reasons. And if the ADA approves it, then the employer has to say yes. Out of 30 cases, the ADA said no to 21 cases. And
wow.
So, yeah. And so it's very, 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 very difficult for people with disabilities who need to work from home for their health reasons to get approved to do this. And so you know, we don't need to talk about this now, but I had to say this because I just think that Like right now we're all feeling super blessed and, you know, excited for this opportunity to be able to work from home, and hopefully that will change things in the future. But I just needed to say that this is something that our disabled brothers and sisters have been needing for years, and
I've been waiting
finally,
for, yeah.
yeah, and finally, since non-disabled people need it, the world is kind of waking up to it. So this is just an opportunity for me to
Oh,
acknowledge my privilege, you know.
yeah.
um,
Isn't that funny how society works like that? It's so weird. That sounds so parallel to other things I'm hearing about right now. We won't get into that.
Exactly. And then the last thing that I'll say, let me think. It was I had a whole exciting good thing to say from what you were saying, but I got all wrapped up in that like ADA thing. But it
Because it's
was,
important. Because we stand with our disabled brothers and sisters and believe
yeah,
that they should not be discriminated against. And if they need to work at home for health reasons, then they absolutely should. So if there are any companies or brands watching this, be more conscious of that.
please. Thank
Please.
you. And I also think, oh, I did remember. So working remotely, I have been doing this for a long time, and you can find like random jobs everywhere. I am not ashamed to say that I went to Craigslist, and on Craigslist, I found this amazing job, which obviously I didn't qualify for because they didn't give it to me, but it was this job literally swiping on someone's Tinder. Like someone
You
was
didn't get that
hiring.
job?
I did, girl, how did I not get that job? I really
They
wanted that
messed
job.
up.
Exactly. I would have been great. My swipe finger is always ready. But like you can find the most random positions online. I literally found a position to be someone's Tinder swiper and to like help them find the love of their life by swiping. You know what I mean? There's a bunch of, there's like virtual personal assistants. There's all these
Yeah.
different types of remote positions that you can find on like the Guava newsletter. I need to get that Guava newsletter.
Guava bean, yeah. They're amazing.
That,
They're amazing.
but there's so many different websites that you can search. Just Google like remote job resources to find lists that are always updated with remote positions. But there's lots of different things that we can do remote. Sometimes it takes a little creativity.
There's also Facebook groups too that will post various remote jobs. So that's something to consider too. I know a lot of people don't necessarily think Facebook when like a job search, but like there's a Facebook group for everything. And there's definitely like digital nomads, remote work, like girls love getting paid while working, like things like that. And there's definitely options that you can find.
Awesome. So yeah, once this airs, I'll definitely add some of those links in there. But this was such a good discussion, Chantel. I really hope that people find some tools and some takeaways from this. Is there anything that you want to share before we wrap up? And then also please tell everyone where they can find you and follow you and like and love.
Yeah. Yes. So like I said, my travel blog is voyagingvagabond.com. You can find me. I'm more active on Instagram right now. It's at voyaging_vagabond. I am huge on uplifting marginalized voices and creating positivity for people that may not necessarily feel it, whether it be because of their body shape, their race, their background, their religion, whatever it might be. It's just a really beautiful community and a welcoming place that I absolutely adore. And something that I was talking about with Annette is I was inspired by my friend Christina, who runs the account Living Wonderful, and she suggested that, so she also does resume reevaluations where essentially she will look at somebody's resume and see where improvements can be made. Kind of what I did for Annette, where we just had like a little consulting meeting where we just sit down one-on-one. I look at her resume and I'm like, okay, this, and this can be improved. This is what you should highlight. This is what you could take out. This is what you could add. So I wanted to kind of, in solidarity to what's happening with the Black Lives Matter movement, I wanted to go ahead and offer my services. So for the next 3 months, I am taking on one person each month. So if you are a Black professional that is looking to get into the industry, is looking to have your resume revamped, or if you need some help in terms of nailing an interview, I want to offer that service to people pro bono. So please come find me on my accounts. Please reach out to me. Let me know that you heard this and that you want to be considered for one of my monthly take-ons, because I really would just love to extend that services to the Black community, because I absolutely adore you guys and I stand with you. And if this is a way I can give back, then I would love to do so. If that does not work for you, like I said, to anyone that may not be within that community, you are absolutely more than welcome to reach out to me. I do offer that service so we can discuss that more. And I want you guys to take all of these tips and just really be able to apply that. But mostly what's really important is just believe in yourself. Like, stop doubting the skills that you already have. Stop doubting what you're able to bring to a job, and just go for it. Like, you already got all of these amazing things about you. Like, show that to the world.
Hell yeah, sis. So everyone, if you are updating your resume, reach out to Chantel. It's at Voyaging_Vagabond on Instagram, or Voyaging Vagabond on Facebook. Reach out to her. She is fantastic. She helped me revamp, update my resume. Like I said, I got hired within a week. And yeah, dude, this is her side hustle as well. So you're going to be employing her. She's going to be helping you find employment. Like, let's work together and like build our community and build each other up. I'm super excited and pumped after this. Thank you so much for joining me, Chantel.
Oh, girl, you know it's a pleasure every time, every time.
Love you so much. And thank you for joining us. We'll see you soon.
Bye, guys.
Bye. How do I end the recording?